Hello, everybody. Bless your heart. I'm glad you're all back, and I hope you've been enjoying the films and watching some of them, maybe learning something out of it. And I do say thank you to any of you that's been taking the time to watch some of these. And we're just trying to do this from our own home and trying to help the people out there by the net and around the world, and those who's maybe not able to go to church or really had time to go. So. Uh, anyway, may God bless you. May the Lord watch over your families and send His angels to keep your family out of harm's way. And I pray over every last one of you. And my Lord, my Lord, my Lord. That's the things that we got to be in the middle of, and it comes upon us in our lives. But you know what? The Lord has always given us a way of escape. And He's going to part those clouds and say, come up hither. Is their names really going to be in the book? Well, I guess we'll find out who's right and who's wrong in that day, whenever that is. Oh, my goodness sakes. I wanted to give you a story, which is a true story, that actually I witnessed with my own eyes in my growing up in my dad's ministry when I was just a little kid back in grade school. The miracle of Gideon that was actually recorded right here in this Bible, that the Lord actually gave Gideon uh, a miracle of renown, of actually using the earth, and a request from Gideon. He's still wondering, Lord, did you really send me? Will you show me a sign that you really want me to be the leader of these people and try to help get rid of these Philistines and the Midianites and all these others that we're living upon? And the people were crying out. They were crying out and saying, Lord, look at what's come upon us. But yet they're right in the middle of them too. So I wanted to share with you a miracle that I watched with my own eyes in my dad's ministry, the miracle of Gideon. And these ministers, throughout the lands and throughout the years, centuries, they would have given anything if they could have seen something like that with their own eyes uh, in their ministry. To be able to testify with their hands upon a Bible like you would in a courtroom, that they actually witnessed something like that in their own ministry or in someone else's ministry. But it's amazing how the Lord, when He does special things like this, it wasn't given for the whole world. But yet it was recorded for the whole world to read and pay attention to and to learn. That with God, all things are possible. You see, with man, it's not. Oh my goodness. In my growing up, Dad was pastoring one of his churches that he had. Mama played the piano. Us kids, we just sang songs going right in there. There was one older fella. Well, he was just maybe in high school. And we played around and played ball together. We done all kinds of things together, me and him, and some of his brothers and the family and others. And he would come down that alley the back alley behind the house on the way to school, walking to school. And Dad would say unto the lad, I better not use his name because I don't need everybody getting mad for using names. And, because I don't know where this fellow's at to this day. But I pray God still touched his life the way God touched him way back then. But this fella that was going to high school, he would come back down that alleyway behind the house on his way to school to go get to the bus. And Dad would catch him. He'd say, hey, sure like to have you in the church. Sure like to see you come to church. If you need a ride, I'll come up and get you. I've been pastoring the church, over here, and I'd sure like to see you come to church. Well, this fella, he'd get mad. Oh my goodness, he would get mad. He would reach down and pick up a rock, and he would throw it at my dad. Oh my Lord, my Lord. And those times it just barely missed Dad. And I said, Dad, I'm going to take him out. I'm not going to watch this fella throw a rock at you. And he almost hit Mama in the back of the head, but just for asking him to go, if he would like to go to church. He would get mad and say, there's no way you could ever in this lifetime ever prove that there ever was a God. You just can't do it. You preachers are just full of nonsense. That book was made up by man, and you're just reading a bunch of fairy tales. You know, just leave me alone. Well, Dad said, Johnny, I'm not trying to pressure you none. I'm going to give out his last name. He said, I'd just like to see you come to church. God cares about you, and he loves even you. I know you've had hard times already in your growing up, but God can help you fix some of those problems you've been in. Get you away from all this stuff and show you that he really loves even you. Oh, he would get mad. He would cuss Dad and shake his fist and say, just don't even talk to me. Leave me alone. Well, every day, or every few days, here we come going down that back alley. And Dad would happen to catch him again. He said, John, sure like to see you in the church. God loves even you, son. And I think God's got a mighty work for even for you. Oh my goodness, the times he just kept reaching down and picking up a rock and throwing it at my dad's head. It bounced off the car. And then one time it even broke one of the windows in the house because it bounced off the car and hit the back of the house and broke a window. Oh, I was running. I'm going to take him out. Well, I'm just a little bitty youngin', but I'm determined I'm not going to let anybody try to take a rock and throw it at my dad and mama. So I went to run, and I was going to go right past Dad, and I was going to tackle him, and I was going to beat the 11 daylights out of him. He was going to know that this boy was going to stand up, And Dad caught me. He caught me by his hand there, and he grabbed a hold of me, and he caught me. And he said, no, son, no. God's going to show him something. God's going to show him that there really is a God. I said, what? No, son, no. Dad, if he keeps throwing rocks at you like I'm gonna take him out. I'm gonna roll him and beat him all the way down that alley, Dad. I'm not gonna watch this man throw a rock at you and Mom just for asking him if he'd like to go to church. And that we can't prove it. Dad said God's gonna do something just for him, Mike. Something he hasn't done in thousands and thousands of years. Well, if he's done it before, it's something I don't know of. But it's never been recorded anywhere. You don't hear anybody talking about it throughout the lands with all those great big preachers on TV. You just hear them telling the story of old. But God's going to do something just for him. It ain't going to be for the whole world to see. It's going to be just for him. God's got to work for him. But he's going to have to get his attention because he's stubborn. And saying we could never in a million years ever prove there ever was a God. God will prove himself with him. The Lord's going to do something special just for him. Now you stay back and watch. You watch. What in the world would the Lord do just for him? He said, stand here. And you stay. He hollered out to the boy. He said, Johnny, God's going to do something special that he hasn't done in thousands of years, all the way back in the Bible. He's going to do something special just for you, Johnny. Tomorrow morning when you wake up and come down that hill, and you see my property line here around the house, and you can pretty well see what's my property around my house and the neighbors. When you come down that hill, Johnny, tomorrow morning, right as when the sun comes up, you're going to see frost all over the ground. From where you wake up, from where you leave your house, all the way down across this town, Johnny, you're going to see frost all the way through this whole town. Frost on the trees, frost on the leaves, frost on the cars and the windows, frost on the houses, frost on the ground. But Johnny, I'm going to take this old carpet that we have laying here on the backyard, and it was like a shag carpet that you wipe your feet off with coming in the back door. He says, I'm going to take this little bitty shag carpet off the back porch, and I'm going to lay it right here in the middle of my yard, John. And I'm going to take my Bible and I'm going to open it up unto the story of Gideon, a famous, famous story, and a miracle that took place with even the land. And I'm going to lay it right there on that piece of carpet. And Johnny, I'm going to leave my Bible right out here overnight. I'm going to put a little rock on it to kind of help hold it down. You know, in case the wind blows, so we can keep the story right here opened up in my yard. I'm going to leave my Bible right out here in the yard overnight, laying it right on top of this little piece of carpet. And it wasn't about that big, you know, about a foot and a half big piece of carpet. And I'm going to lay it right here in the middle of the yard, Johnny. But that carpet and my Bible is going to be nice and dry. There's not going to be a drop of water anywhere on my Bible or on that piece of carpet. Tomorrow morning, Johnny, when you wake up and come down that hill, you're going to see what I just told you. Out of all the people of the world, Johnny, God's going to do it just for you. He's going to show you that He really is a God, and our God. He gave His Son on that cross, Johnny, and the Spirit of God was in His Son. He was given by the Holy Ghost. Johnny, God's going to do it just for you. Oh, he laughed and he laughed and he laughed. He said, there ain't no way. Do you know what time of year it is? We're going to have frost on the ground in the morning. And your yard, and your carpet right there, after leaving it out, and it's going to be nice and dry. God's going to do it just for you, John. Tomorrow morning, when the sun comes up. He said, oh, there's just no way this could ever be. Oh, you're just so full of it, preacher. Bunch of nonsense. Well, he went to school that day. And I'm standing there looking at Dad going, wow. Tomorrow, we're going to see this in the morning when the sun comes up. Whoa. That would be something. He said, son, do you believe in the miracles of God and the miracles that was recorded in this Bible? Of course, Dad. son, God's going to do it just for this man. He's not doing it for the whole world to see. Oh, if they could see this with their own eyes, they would believe. Faith and trust in God is what I have. And that's what I teach. Tomorrow morning, even you are going to see. Wow. And guess what, guys? That very next morning, I'm ready to get out there. I mean, I'm looking out through the windows of the back porch and going, what's outside? What's outside? And behold, there it was. Dad came out that back porch after having his coffee. And he's waving his hand towards heaven. He said, I thank my God and I thank your son who was given on that cross. Only you could do this. Here comes John. Here comes Johnny coming down that back alley headed to school. And the minute he got to our property, right there at the edge of where our property line was there around the house, and he's just and looking around because he's in awe and everywhere he sees all the way down there and all the way out of from his own house. He stops right there at the edge of our property. And he says, what? It's the wrong time of season of the year for it to be frosting all over the trees and the yard and the grass and frost on the car windows. It's the wrong time of the year. What? Hey, Johnny, come here, son. Come on. I want to show you something, son. You remember that piece of carpet that we laid right there in the middle of the yard? Johnny, looky here, we haven't touched it. I told everyone to stay away from my Bible, just leave it alone. I'm going to leave it out there overnight. And Johnny, here it is. Come here, Johnny, let me show you something. Reach down and pick up that Bible. He said, oh, I ain't going to touch that thing. Oh, I ain't going to touch that. Well, all right, John, I'll pick it up myself. Dad reached down and he picked up his Bible off of that piece of carpet. And he said, Johnny, you notice that my Bible is just nice and dry? Just like I laid it out last night? Well, yeah. Notice there's no moisture, and we've got it all the way around the land. Everywhere you've seen, Johnny, even from your own house, had frost. There's nothing on my Bible. It's bone dry. But let's look at that piece of carpet I laid it on, John. Would you mind picking that one up? Well, being it's just a piece of carpet, but I ain't going to touch that Bible. Well, I'll hold on to my Bible. You seen it. Pick that piece of carpet up, John, and tell me what you see. It was just as dry as Daddy's Bible. Underneath that carpet, underneath it, was a dry spot the size of that where the carpet lay. Just as beautiful and nice and dry. He said, take your hand, Johnny, and rub through the grass. Feel this carpet and see, is there any moisture? Is there any frost? Can you feel any water? No. How could this be? Dad said, Johnny, out of all the people in the world, and ministers around the world would give anything to see this with their own eyes and to be able to testify that they saw it with their own eyes. All they know is the stories of old. And Johnny, for all the people of the world, somehow God is doing this just for you. He's going to show you that He is a God. Johnny, do you believe now? Would you just come to church? I'm not going to make you. But Johnny, God's got to work even just for you. He's going to change your life. And I know it. He said, well, that is impressive. But I ain't quite sure. No, no. No, I'm not quite sure. I got to admit, though, that is pretty impressive. Yeah. If that don't beat all you ever did see, right out here in the yard, I just don't know. Daddy said, okay. I tell you what, Johnny. God's going to do something else. What would that be? Well, Johnny, tomorrow morning when you get up and come down that hill and come down that alleyway, Johnny, you're going to notice the opposite tomorrow morning when the sun comes up. You're going to notice that it's going to be nice and beautiful and well weathered. When you get up in the morning, Johnny, and all the way through this whole town, and all the way coming down that hill and that back alley in my yard, Johnny, it's going to be nice and dry. There's not going to be one drop upon the ground. There's not going to be any frost. There's not even going to be any dew. It's not even going to rain tonight, Johnny. It's not even going to rain. It's going to be peace. But Johnny, that piece of carpet, it's going to be sopping wet. Out of all of this whole city, John, all the way to when you go to school, it's going to be nice and dry. But that carpet's going to be nice and wet. And I'm going to lay my Bible upon it, John. But this time I'm going to close it. And I'm going to lay it upon that carpet. That piece of carpet is going to be sopping wet. You're going to notice some water, maybe on the top and on the sides of my Bible. It ain't going to hurt it none. But nowhere in the lands is going to be a drop of water. He said, what? Only here in this yard, that carpet, and everything's going to be dry? Uh-huh. Johnny, God's going to do it just for you. Out of all the people of the world, just for you, John. He said, well, I got to admit, if he could do that one, maybe I might change my mind. Huh. We'll see. Now all you got to do, somebody playing with my mind. Johnny, you'll see tomorrow morning when the sun comes up. And behold, I witnessed it. My whole family witnessed this. But we had to stay awake and stay up. Don't get near that Bible. Stay in the house and let God work. That next morning, it was exactly like Dad said. Exactly word for word like Dad told him he would see the very next morning. And here he come. Everywhere he was at, it was just nice and dry. But when he come down that hill, Dad was waiting for him, having his coffee on the back porch. Hey, Johnny. Good morning, son. You notice anything different this morning? The weather's pretty nice, isn't it, this morning? Mm-hmm. Hey, John, you remember that piece of carpet we laid in the yard with my Bible? Come here. Come on. Look down there and tell me what you see, son. You tell me what you see. And he was knelt down there, and Dad reached down, and he said, he picked up the Bible, and he said, look at here, John. That looked like this maybe a little bit of frost to you. Well, it's got some water, you can see, on the sides of it and on the top of it. Hey, John, you don't mind touching that carpet, do you? How about picking it up off the ground? Wait a minute, Mike, go get me that bowl that your mama's got. And he got me a great big salad bowl. He said, bring me the bowl. So I ran over to the porch, grabbed the bowl that Daddy already had set. And he said, hey, John, let's wring out this carpet. And I'm going to at least fill that bowl maybe halfway full. And it was just sopping wet as they picked it up off the ground. And I mean, it was just wringing wet, pouring right out of it, like it left it off in the shower, and the shower running. You got one sopping wet, you know, and they're wringing it out, and he practically filled that bowl full of water. He said, Johnny, you're going to notice all the way to school, all the way through town. You're not going to find anything wet. Nice and dry. His mouth come wide open. He said, what? Johnny, out of all the people of the world, out of all those great big ministers that's been all over the television, who tells all those stories, ain't none of them got a story like this. Because if they had those stories, they'd be telling them, wouldn't they? Or somebody would be telling their story. But out of all the people in the world, John, God's just done it for you. He's got a mighty work that he's going to do with you. You willing to come to church, John? I mean, you know, just to try it out. I'd even give you a ride. I'll even bring you back home. But I'm not going to make you, John. He said, well, I got to admit, that's his something. Okay. Didn't think I'd ever be saying this. But I guess I'll come to church one time. If this don't beat all you ever did see. You see, the second time he came down, there was a whole bunch of people that he went to school with in his class, because he gathered them overnight, or told them all what was going on. There was about 12, 13, something like that, of the other kids. They wanted to see this for themselves. Well, they stood back, but they wouldn't come in the yard. Dad looked up at them. He said, kids, with God, All things is possible to him who believes. God's calling you kids. Would you be willing to come to church? I'm not going to make any of you come to my church. But do you believe now? Johnny said, well, I'll come. One time. Don't believe I'm even saying this. Worried about what all these kids would say if they found out I went to church. But I did tell you that if you could prove it to me, I did say I would come to church. I'll come. And he goes walking down that hill with all those kids. You know, just a handful. Just shaking their heads. Johnny came to church that Sunday morning. And that morning he went down into the altar. When Dad said, is there any that would like to know the Lord? Johnny went to that altar. He cried his eyes out. You see, I can tell people about it. I watched it with my own eyes. I'll put my hand on a Bible that says holy on the front of it. You can see all the reading that I've done. Whatever. I witnessed this with my own eyes. I'll put my hand on it. I'll raise my hand towards heaven. I witnessed this with my own eyes. My whole family witnessed this. With God, all things are possible unto him who believes. When miracles like this was recorded, the whole world didn't get to see it. All of the great big ministers of renown, even they didn't get to see something like this with their own eyes. Over and over down through the years, how people would treat my dad. But what can we do? Old Dad's gone now. Well, he passed away in 2009. But there isn't one minister across these lands or abroad that could even testify they witnessed the miracle of Gideon with their own eyes. No matter what you think of me, with God all things are possible unto him who believes. These words were written down and preserved for you and I. May you hold the words of God and write them down in your heart. And be ready when he comes. Amen.